Hey guys, welcome out to the range. I wanted to do a quick video for you about my experience at Rogers Range. I wrote an article on it. It's on my website. You're welcome to read it. You're welcome to download it. And the notation that I made about this video was, tell the story of Rogers Range boldly. Okay, I've been tippy-toeing around this story. It's a true story. I've been tippy-toeing around this story for several years, but I'm going to say it boldly now. I don't know if he still is the owner. Steve Reichert was then the owner of Tier 1 Group. And Tier 1 Group, like most Special Forces training facilities, is going to have a Rogers Range on base. And Rogers Range, for those that don't know, is Bill Rogers. Bill Rogers was Bill Rogers is still alive, but he was an FBI agent for many years and also got into competition shooting. And a lot of what we do now in the industry is actually born out of the things that Bill Rogers has taught the industry. So this is a guy who has really molded a lot of what is considered normal now that people don't even realize where it comes from. I don't recall how I ended up getting invited to this event, if it was through the magazine I was writing for or through a connection with Steve, but I was invited to come out to a media-only event to represent or to show the new Rogers Range that Tier 1 Group had just built. And if I remember correctly, Steve Reichert, and you need to look up Steve Reichert. Steve said to me, I've invited, I think he said like 80 people, 80 media people to this event, and everybody turned him down. And the only two people that said yes were me and another magazine writer photographer named Sean Utley. And Sean and I went out to this, and to this day, I reel. That was, like I said, I'll have to look it up. I want to say it's like 2010 or something like that, 2009, 2010. To this day, I reel of the memory that we actually had the Rogers Range and two, I think one was a former Special Forces operator, and the other one, actually I think they both were. But one is a competition shooter now, and the other one is an employee of Tier 1 Group. I can't fully remember. It was basically Phil and Dallas. Phil and Dallas, if you guys are watching, chime in, because I can't remember what your positions were. But normally Rogers Range is a week-long thing. We had it for 2 days. And the reason so many media turned this down was people know that the Rogers Range will embarrass you. If you think you're a badass and you go to Rogers Range, that computer will absolutely put you to shame, because the computer is running an algorithm that generates what is essentially a chaos algorithm that's incapable of repeating itself. It will repeat itself after so many cycles, but it's like some ridiculous, like 1,000,000-something cycles before it actually gets around to actually repeating something. And as you can see here in the video, there are multiple targets at multiple distances, and I want to say they're like from 5 yards out to like 25 or 30 yards, something like that, and they're very fast. And they're 0.5 cycles, so it's basically and it drops again, and you've got to hit it within that window. And I left there with a score of like 70-something and was totally dismayed. I remember leaving there just downtrodden because I thought, I'm better than this. I'm better than this. And Steve called me on the way home and he says, how'd you do? And I told him. And he says, that's actually not that bad. And I'm like, come on, man. And he goes, no, seriously, that's not that bad of a score, especially for only having done it 2 days. So I kind of felt a little bit better. But I was a cop at the time. Guys, this is all in the article. Please read the article. I actually had to read the article the other day just to remind myself of all the things that had happened, which is why it's good to write things down. So anyways, went back to work as a cop, and since then was able to start applying the lessons that I've learned at Rogers Range, and I apply them out here when I shoot, and have really found that it has transformed, I hate to say this, but honestly, it has transformed my life. It's transformed the segment of my life that has to do with firearms training, and it has transformed how I approach firearms training, how I watch my front sight, how I handle the firearm, how I deal with reloads. It has truly transformed how I approach the craft of the use of the handgun. And I say this to you in hopes that if you ever have the opportunity to go to Rogers Range, definitely do so. A few months after I wrote that article, I was at SHOT Show and I was talking to the rep from from Action Target, and I believe his name was Chad, and I was talking to Chad about having gone to Rogers Range and how incredibly epic the experience was. And I said, yeah, Bill Rogers is, and by the way, this book right here, if you can get your hands on it, do so. Trust me, you need to read this book and then reread it and then reread it, because the book in and of itself has all the precepts of the Rogers Range techniques. And so anyways, I'm talking with Chad, and I said, and you know, Bill has changed my life in how I approach all this stuff. And he goes like this, and I look over and there's Bill Rogers. I have no idea how I managed to miss him. He was like 10 feet to Chad's left. And I go over and I shake his hand and we start talking. He says, oh yeah, I read your article. And he actually said to me some of the comments that I made in the article. So yeah, he'd actually read the article. And he says, good job, I really liked the article. And he said, remind me what your score was again. And I told him, and like I said, I'll have to look it up real quick because I forget what it was, but it was in the 70s, either 70s or high 60s. And he goes like this to me, and I lean over the table, and he whispers to me in these earphones, because there's live gunfire going on, and he whispers to me, and I hear it clearly through the earphones, and he said, you do realize that you scored much higher than most, and he named off a Tier 1 unit, and he says, you scored much higher than most of the Tier 1 operators from this unit that come out to the Rogers Range, and you only did that in 2 days. They normally have 5 days minimum with us. And I remember going, what? And honestly, I wish I could tell you it was like, yeah, man. I didn't have that moment. For me, it was a, excuse me. And basically what he said was, you went at this with an open mind. You went at this not to try to prove something to the instructors or yourself. You went at this with an open mind, which is why the notation that I made for this video was, tell the story of Rogers Range and tell it boldly. And going to Rogers Range with an open mind, I basically focused and I said, I've got these guys for a limited period of time. I carry a gun for a living. I was a cop back then. I carry a gun for a living. I need to know what I'm doing with a firearm. And every time that I would go to training, I would get exposed to more crap that I had never been shown before, and I'd go, why in the hell have I never seen this before? I carry a gun. Well, guess what, guys? In the same manner that you can buy a car and minimum level of training, get a driver's license and get turned loose, same exact thing with a gun. And remember, with a gun in most states, there is no license required. And I know someone's going to jump on that, oh, we have to license. No, stop, stop. Cars are not protected by the Second Amendment, firearms are. But remember, firearms, when the amendments to the Constitution were written, firearms were an integral part of society. It is what you did, it's what you carried, it's what you had on with you. It's not so much that you trained with it, although there actually was training, but it's that you lived with the gun and you shot the gun for food. So by default, you were constantly training with your firearm. That's no longer the case. We are no longer a hunter society. We are no longer an agrarian society. We have to go to places like Rogers Range, like Tactical Defense Institute, like Valor Ridge. We have to go to places like that to get training, to learn how to be proficient and remain proficient with our firearms. To bring all this home, I say to you, I'm doing this video boldly and blatantly because I've reached a point of frustration with this inbred industry of ours that is so busy on only focusing on those whose first name is former. Former Special Forces, fill in the rest. Somehow, if you're not a former something or another, people don't want to listen to you. Guys, there are people like me, lots of us out here, that do any number of other things other than be full-time badasses. And we are better shots. We are far more proficient with our firearms than any police officer or any soldier, current and or former. I've seen it with my own eyes, guys. I have shot beside welders, stay-at-home moms, dentists, optometrists, you know, registered nurses, LPNs, people who say, I got a gun, I better learn how to use it, and they take it seriously. And then they're shocked when they find out from the instructor and or from me that the people that you're somehow emulating aren't actually the badasses that you need to be emulating. You need to be emulating yourself, which is why this channel and my company is called Tier 1 Citizen. Be the best Tier 1 citizen you can be Forget about what the Tier 1 operators are doing. Be the best Tier 1 citizen you can be. Realize your potential.